You woke up 19 minutes ago, before your eyes had fully opened. Your hand had already found the phone. You did not decide to do that. There was no thought, no moment of choosing. The arm moved on its own, the way a knee moves when a doctor strikes it with a hammer. Now watch what happened next. You did not read anything. You scrolled. 3 seconds on one image, 2 on the next. Something almost registered, and then it was gone. You were not looking for information. You were looking for the feeling of looking. Then the second reach. Coffee in one hand, screen in the other. Because the 90 seconds it takes for water to boil has become an unbearable stretch of empty time. Then the third. In the bathroom. The fourth. At the red light. The fifth in the elevator, where there is no signal at all. By the time you sat down to do the thing you actually planned to do today, you had already rehearsed the same reflex a dozen times. Gap appears. Gap gets filled. Gap appears. Gap gets filled. Now notice something. Nobody was in the room with you. There were no chains, no threats, no one standing over your shoulder telling you where to look. Every one of those reaches felt like a choice you made freely, in a quiet room, alone. And that is the part that sits on your chest at night. Because if nobody forced you, then the only explanation left is that something is defective in you, that you have no discipline, that you are weak. You have been carrying that verdict privately for years, and you have never once said it out loud to another human being. I am going to remove that verdict. You are not weak. Weakness is not what this is. What you are living inside is the correct and predictable output of a system that trained you, exactly as it was engineered to. You were conditioned, deliberately, by people who understand your nervous system far better than you do. If you intend to see the mechanism, subscribe. You will need the rest of this, because before you can break the conditioning, you have to read what you signed. There is a document. You have never seen it, but you signed it. Not once, thousands of times, in fragments, without ever being shown the page. I'm going to give it a name now, because you have needed one for a very long time. The anesthetic contract. Here are its terms. Clause 1. You will never again be required to feel discomfort for longer than 4 seconds. Clause 2. In exchange, you surrender the capacity to feel it at all. That is the entire agreement. 2 lines. Everything else is small print. Read the second clause again. Slowly. Because that is the one nobody explains to you. The trade was never pleasure in exchange for pain. The trade was relief in exchange for capacity. Every time you erased a small discomfort in under 4 seconds, the cue, the silence, the awkward pause, the moment of not knowing what to do with your hands, you were making a payment. And every payment removed a fraction of the machinery you used to hold discomfort at all. You did not lose your discipline. You spent it, in increments too small to feel, across roughly a decade. No single payment was ever large enough to notice, which is exactly why you never noticed the account emptying. Now look at where the signature actually happened. It was never a decision. Nobody signed something like this at a desk, with a pen in daylight. You signed it in the 2-second window between finishing one thing and beginning the next. You signed it in the elevator. You signed it at 6:40 in the morning, with your eyes still half closed. This contract was built to be signed by a man who is not paying attention. That is not a flaw in the design. That is the design. And here is the part I need you to sit inside for a moment. The people who engineered this understood something about you that you have never understood about yourself. A man who cannot sit alone in an empty room will accept almost anything to avoid being sent there. Which leaves one question. What has this contract already taken from you while you were not reading the bill? Here is the invoice. I am going to read it to you line by line, and I am not going to soften any of it. Line 1. Your attention span. You cannot finish a film without reaching for the second screen. You reread the same paragraph 3 times and retain nothing. You open an application, forget why, close it, and open it again 90 seconds later. This is not a personality trait. It is a measurable loss, and you paid for it in 4-second installments. Line 2. Your boredom. This one is worse than it sounds, so hold still for it. Boredom was never a malfunction. It was raw material. Every idea you have ever had in your life arrived inside an unfilled moment. In the shower, on a walk, staring at a ceiling, waiting for something that was late. That is the only place ideas are manufactured. You have not been bored in years. You have also not had an original thought in years. Those are not 2 separate observations. Line 3. The people in the room. Your partner told you something last week, and you produced the correct facial expression at the correct moment, and retained nothing. Your child spoke to you while you were mid-scroll, and you said the word "yeah" without knowing what you were agreeing to. They noticed. They stopped repeating themselves a long time ago. You interpreted that silence as peace. Line 4. The thing you are going to build. You know exactly what it is. You do not need me to name it for you. It has sat in the same place in your mind for somewhere between 2 and 11 years. And every year, the story you tell yourself about why it has not started becomes more sophisticated. You have the time. You have always had the time. You spend it every morning in 11-minute increments, and you have never seen the balance printed on a page. That is the invoice. And now the clause nobody reads. This contract renews automatically. There is no expiry, no notification, no final demand. The system was engineered so that the cost never presents itself as a bill. It presents itself as a mood. A low, flat dissatisfaction with no visible source. And because it has no visible source, you assign the blame to the only defendant available. Yourself. That is the mechanism. That is how it has stayed in force for a decade without a single complaint from you. But there is a flaw in the design. There is one clause they could not write, because the payment they need from you is the only thing you can still refuse to make. The payment they need from you is not your money. It is not even your time. It is your consent to be comfortable. And that is the flaw. Comfort cannot be administered to a man who refuses it. There is no mechanism on earth that can force a man to look at a screen. The entire structure rests on you continuing to say yes. 4 seconds at a time. Now I need to correct something you have been told your whole life. You have heard the instruction 100 times. Find your purpose. Find your why. Replace pleasure with meaning. You have tried. It has never held for more than 9 days. That is not because you failed. It is because the instruction is given in the wrong order. In 1932, Aldous Huxley described a population that required no chains because it had been given something better. Constant engineered relief. He understood that a man who is never uncomfortable will never ask a question, and a man who never asks a question does not need to be guarded. And Viktor Frankl, writing from inside the worst conditions a human has survived, observed something that is almost always quoted backwards. Meaning did not remove the suffering. Meaning made the suffering bearable. Read that carefully. The capacity came first. The meaning attached to it afterward. This is the correction. Purpose is not a thing you locate. It is not hiding in a journal, a personality test, or one more video like this one. Purpose is what becomes visible when a man stops anesthetizing himself long enough to see what is actually in front of him. You cannot select a purpose with a discomfort tolerance of 4 seconds. Every purpose that ever mattered is built out of long stretches of boredom, difficulty, and no visible reward. If you cannot hold 30 seconds of an empty room, you cannot hold 3 years of an unfinished project. So the work is not to find meaning. The work is to rebuild the organ that meaning requires. That organ is rebuilt the same way it was dismantled, in small increments, deliberately. I am going to tell you exactly how. This is the protocol. 4 instructions. None of them are difficult, and that is the point, because the contract was not signed in difficult moments either. 1. The first 90 seconds after you wake, the phone stays where it is, not the first hour. 90 seconds. You are not building discipline. You are refusing the first payment of the day. 2. Once per day, find a gap and do not fill it. The queue, the red light, the elevator. Stand in it. You will feel a physical pull toward your pocket around the 4th second. Let it arrive. Let it pass. Say 1 sentence internally. That is a payment I am not making. 3. 1 conversation per day with the device in another room. Not silenced, not face down. Another room. Watch what the other person does when they realize you are actually there. 4. 20 minutes of walking with nothing in your ears. No music, no podcast. This will be the most uncomfortable one. It is also the only one that restores manufacturing. And 1 prohibition. Do not track this. No streak, no application, no counter. A counter is the same architecture in different clothing, a small reward for a small action. You are not collecting points. You are rebuilding tissue. Tissue does not report daily. Give it 30 days. Somewhere in the 3rd week, something strange happens. An idea will arrive. Unprompted, in an empty moment, the way they used to. That is the organ coming back online. 13 minutes is enough to deliver a diagnosis. It is not enough to complete a treatment. The full protocol, in clinical detail, is at thephysician.netlify.ap. Link in the description. If you were only here to feel understood, ignore it. If you intend to actually terminate the contract, it is waiting. 1 last thing. Somewhere in this video, 1 line landed harder than the others. You know which one. You felt it in your chest, and you kept watching anyway. Write the first word that comes to mind. 1 word. In the comments. Do not explain it. You are not weak. You were trained. And training can be reversed.